Alright, so here we are, Buffalo Airways again with Dan Jones, and as requested, we had questions previously in regards to rib lacing. And Dan's currently finishing off a elevator for DC3 for Joe. And here we are. So what are we doing today, Dan?
It was supposed to be for Mikey's DC3, but we were too busy on the Electra, so it's I guess it's going into general spares. So what we're doing is the elevator's now essentially covered. The fabric's cemented on it, basically around the whole periphery of it. But what we have to do now is you always have to mechanically attach fabric to whatever it's on. And there's various different ways of doing that. With the DC3, it's actually laced on with a polyester lacing cord. And it's laced every inch. I've started this rib. It's laced every inch, and the lacing, you can probably see it over here maybe, it just goes around the top of the rib and out the bottom of the fabric and across the bottom of the rib. And it just holds the fabric physically to the structure. As you're flying and the air going across the surface of the wing or the elevator or whatever, the pressure is lower than the pressure of the air inside the structure. So that's kind of a simplified version of it, but as you're flying and the faster you go, the airstream is trying to basically suck the fabric off the structure, or at the very least balloon the fabric off the structure, which would change the shape of it, and you'd get all kinds of interesting results, right? You'd be seriously playing test pilot if you were doing that. So what we do is, with the DC3, it's laced onto the structure. It's laced every inch, and that's per the structural repair manual for the DC3. So what we've done is just measured out the spacing of each rib, pre-punched the holes in it, and then we're going to lace it. And when it's finished, it'll look like these two when the lacing's done, and then afterwards it'll be covered with a fabric tape, which encloses the whole thing and keeps the rain out of it, streamlines it a little bit, just covers it up so that it ends up being finished. When the whole elevator is finished, this is kind of the easy job, just putting the basic fabric on it. But now and it's not hard, but it's kind of involved. You end up, every rib has tape put over it, leading edge has tape put over it, trailing edge has tape put over it, and it's just and it's not really tape, like what we call tape. There's no adhesive or anything. It's just a strip of fabric. So this is one that I've pre-cut for this rib when this one is done, just so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. This gets doped on once it's finished, and it's a reinforcement for the fabric. Any place where there's extra wear, like along the trailing edge, the leading edge, that type of thing. Any place where it needs some reinforcement from the fabric getting chafed through by the structure. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to continue the lacing process. When you're lacing a structure, there's different ways of doing it. DC3, like I said, uses lacing. Some airplanes use rivets to hold the fabric on. Some airplanes use screws, wire clips. Fabric's even been nailed on to wooden ribs back in the old days. We don't do that anymore. But so there's no requirement for this. Doesn't have to be one continuous piece of cord. If it was, you'd be working with a piece of cord probably 40 feet long. So you can imagine how many knots and tangles you would get in it. Plus you'd end up passing it, the cord gets passed through the fabric in this hole, out the bottom hole, across the rib, in that hole, and out this hole. So by the time you got to the end of it, you can imagine how chafed that cord would be from being passed through that many times. Plus this is the cord here. There's two types of cord. There's round cord and flat cord. This is flat cord. And it's not string or a fishing line or anything like this. It's specifically cord for this process. It's part of the SDC. So, and it's waxed, and it's waxed to help preserve it and Also seems to be waxed to make it taste not very good, because sometimes, especially with older airplanes that have been outside or in a, not in a hangar like this, but in an unheated hangar, you get mice move into them. And sometimes you'll have mice build a nest inside a wing, and they'll make their nest out of insulation, they'll make it out of pieces of fabric. They don't seem to chew on the cord very much, so I guess if you're a mouse, this doesn't taste particularly good. I mean, there's always one show-off that'll do it, but kind of not very often you see it. So, and the other thing, when you're lacing a rib, there's no requirement to splice your cord together. So it's it doesn't have to be one continuous piece of cord ultimately. You can do it in pieces. You could do it in individual laces with a starter knot if you wanted to, or you had to. I did the controls for an Anshank like that once, and I think I was lacing for about 2 weeks, but it's kind of slow. And you can start and stop wherever you want with this, depending on the length of your cord, and there's no requirement to go from front to back or back to front. I could start from the back lacing forward, and you could start from the front on the same rib lacing backwards, and where we met in the middle we'd do the golden stitch, and that would be that. So, but anyway, so it's kind of it has a reputation for being complicated or difficult, and it really isn't. It's just kind of one of those stories that gets perpetuated, and it's not. It's no pun intended. So what we do, and we've mapped out the whole rib here and pre-punched the holes. Snap-on makes a nice little tool that's just about perfect for doing that, just a little awl, and it's perfect for punching the holes in the fabric, and it makes it a lot easier than trying to figure out where to shove the needle through the fabric and make your own holes. So we've mapped this all out. So what we're going to do, I'm right-handed, and this is, in the old days, just to digress a little bit, they would have used a straight needle and tied this knot. This is one continuous piece of cord, these stitches here. In the old days, like in the really old days, like going back to like the 20s, when they would put this cord on, the cord would run alongside the rib on top of the fabric. And with a high wing airplane, generally people would, and it didn't make any difference aerodynamically, but generally people would tie it on the top surface of a high wing airplane or the bottom surface of a low wing airplane where you wouldn't see it. So it would look, the side that you were looking at would look just like this. When the racing thing kind of got going in the 30s with the Granville brothers and you know, Benny Howard and the people at Travel Air started building airplanes, and everybody was into speed, somebody came up with the idea, and it's kind of been lost to time, who said, if we had a needle, same needle, if we had a needle with a bent tip, we could run the fabric cord and the knot on the inside of the fabric, make the wings smoother, and maybe pick up 3 or 4 knots overall. So that became the birth of what's called the hidden modified seine knot. It's the very same knot, it's just the knot runs on the inside of the fabric where you don't see it. So the knot that the fabric gets tied with is called a modified seine knot. The original seine knot, and for the life of me, I don't know what an unmodified seine knot looks like, because we use the modified seine knot for airplanes. But the original seine knot goes back about 1,000 years in its history, and it's one of the stories of its origin is that it was used by fishermen on the Seine River in France for the creation of their fishing nets. So that's one story. There's also another story that involves English pharaohs making beer and using the knot to tie the bushels of grain together, something like that. And that's maybe a happier story. So, because after all, what's fish and chips without a pint of beer, really, right? So anyway, so what we're gonna do here, and all we do is we take our needle and we put it, and I'm right-handed, you can start left or right, doesn't matter, but I'm right-handed, so it's easier for me to to work on the right hand side. And what you do is, now Mike, you're going to have to do a little editing with this. So, okay, so what we've done now is we've just passed the needle. You can see through the sawhorse there. Just pass the needle through the fabric. And all we're going to do is pass it through the fabric again. We're going around this rib. And it comes out the top. And all we're doing is just like lacing your sneakers. All we're doing is lacing the fabric to the structure of the wing. There's just a couple of rules involved. So what we do is I'm gonna do this two different ways. I'm gonna do this the first time in a very slow, simple way, so you can see exactly what we're doing. All we do, we're going to tie a starter knot here, and this is where our cord is going to start. We'll start from here, and then we'll run up half a dozen stitches till we run out of cord or whatever, and then we're going to tie a finishing knot. But what we do is, this is a square knot. Now, when you tie a square knot, you can go right over left, under and through, and left over right, under and through. And that gives you, if you can see it here, a square knot. You have two loops. The tails of the loop here in my left hand pass through the loop of the one in my